The Wheel of Time Season 3 Episode 5 is called Tel'aran'rhiod, where we explore the world of dreams and the consequences of abusing power. Let's unravel it. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. This video is mostly safe for non-book readers, but as always, check the description for a full spoiler warning. Last episode, Moiraine got a powerful sangreal called the Sakarnen from the tree in Rhuidean, and now she's taking it for a test drive in the desert, but it nearly destroyed her before Lan stepped in. The Sakarnen is said to be the most powerful sangreal ever made for women. Its male counterpart, Callandor, hasn't appeared yet, but is prophesied to be used by the Dragon Reborn. Remember, sangreal amplify a channeler's ability, but not without risk. Rand used one at the end of Season 1 and accidentally freed Ishamael. The Sakarnen's power nearly burned Moiraine out, like what happened to some of the women linked with Nynaeve and Egwene in Season 1. In the books, most sangreal have built-in safeguards, but the Sakarnen clearly doesn't. If Lan hadn't intervened, Moiraine could have been toast, literally. I have a non-book theory that maybe Callandor lacks a buffer or safeguard too, and the two are meant to be used together by a man and a woman linked together to safely balance each other. Dangerous alone, safer together, similar to the themes of balance in the books. The show hasn't always been clear about how much the characters can channel unaided, but Robert Jordan explained there are different power levels. Rand and some of the Forsaken, like Ishamael and Lanfear, are near the top, and with a sangreal, they'd be nearly unstoppable. Lanfear told Rand that if he uses Callandor and she uses the Sakarnen, together they could destroy the Dark One, though I wouldn't trust her completely. We saw her in the last episode as Mierin Sedai, the one who drilled into the pattern seeking the so-called true power. Instead, she accidentally opened the Dark One's prison and unleashed evil and chaos into the world. I dive deeper into this in my previous Unraveled video, if you'd like more context. Back to power rankings. Nynaeve is up there too, perhaps comparable in raw potential to some Forsaken, but she's untrained and currently blocked, meaning she can't control her channeling. The Sea Folk noted that her desire for control and her firmly planted stance are part of why she's blocked. As we learned in Season 1, women must surrender to the One Power to control it. Ironically, Nynaeve taught this to Egwene, yet still struggles with it herself. Will she learn to let go, or will her need to control continue to hold her back? Egwene and Elaine's power levels aren't far behind Nynaeve's. They have the potential to be stronger than any other living Aes Sedai. We're also reminded that some women outside the White Tower, like some Aiel Wise Ones and Sea Folk Windfinders, can channel too. The Windfinders, in particular, are much stronger than the Tower believed, using their power to move ships swiftly across the sea. I loved how their weaves looked like Aurora Borealis. In the books, Elaine takes the time to learn to channel large flows of the power from the Sea Folk, which we get a brief hint of in her dream later this episode. Anyway, the Sakarnen gives Moiraine an enormous power boost. Unlike anything she's felt before, Lan describes it as euphoric, like a deep hunger or thirst being quenched. The One Power is highly addictive, and using a sangreal like the Sakarnen without caution can lead to burnout. Given how many of Moraine's visions showed her dying at Lanfear's hand, it's possible this level of power gives her a real fighting chance, maybe even enough power to surpass Lanfear. But can she or anybody sidestep the threads of fate? The One Power visuals in the scene were stunning, especially how Moraine's weaves reshaped the desert. It reminded me of her Rhuidean visions, where she faced countless possible futures. Here, she's at the center, with many possibilities in front of her, but will she make the right choices? She told Lan that the only way Rand lives is if she dies, and we saw several versions of that outcome in her visions. Later, she shared with Swan another key insight from her visions. If the White Tower doesn't bow to Rand, he'll lose the last battle, but there really weren't many examples of this in her visions. Moiraine saw 1,000,000 futures, though we were only shown 17. Do you think we'll see more as the show progresses? Like Doctor Strange in Infinity War, she's seen how the dragon fails in most timelines, and she knows what must happen for him to win. Sadly, it seems she won't be around to find out. We learned that Couladin and Savannah of the Shaido Aiel rejected Rand as the Karakarn after he exited Rhuidean, and he still has to prove himself to the other clan chiefs. He likely thought his dragon tattoos would be enough for the people of the dragon, as the Aiel were once called, to follow him. But when has anything ever been that simple? We also learned Rand must meet the other clan chiefs at a place in the Waste called Alkire Dal to formally declare himself. While waiting for them to arrive, he and his group stayed at Cold Rock's Hold. At Cold Rock's Hold, seat of the Tar.Aiel, the clan seems to mostly accept Rand as the chief of chiefs. Even Rurark's great daughter, Alcera, has already heard the news, likely thanks to Dreamwalker Wise Ones spreading word quickly. Alcera asked Rand if he was the Karakarn, and after showing his double dragon tattoos, he simply replied in his best Jesus impression, "I am." Rand has come to accept his identity, but will the rest of the Aiel? I loved how genuine Rand seemed this episode, kind, smiling, and playful with Alcera. This goodness is so important to Rand's character. At Ruidion, he wasn't in a rush to prove himself to the Aiel. Instead, he chose to stay behind to ensure Moraine's safety. It was because of his goodness that he ended up returning with the Dawn, fulfilling that prophecy. Hopefully that selfless nature, likely shaped by Tam's influence and his Manetheren heritage, may be what keeps Rand from falling to the shadow this turning of the wheel. The Aiel have many customs unfamiliar to Rand and the others. Avienda's first task as a Wise One apprentice was to teach Rand about their customs, like eating etiquette and social rules, though she clearly resents the task. We learn that Rhuarc has 2 wives, Leon and Bear, which is common among the Aiel. Leon, the roof mistress of Cold Rock's hold, holds authority even over the Sakarnen there, as Aiel men don't own land and must be given permission to enter her hold. Alcera calling Rand by his full name is another example of Aiel tradition. Lan and Moraine even enjoyed sharing usquai together, a maize or corn-based alcohol from the books. These glimpses hint at a rich culture that unfolds more deeply across many books. Speaking of new cultures, we were introduced to the Sea Folk this episode, as Nynaeve, Elaine, Mat, and Min traveled toward Tanchico. The sails mistress runs the ship, and Windfinders, who can channel, aid in navigation, though they keep their abilities hidden from Aes Sedai to avoid recruitment. When Elaine and Nynaeve came on deck, the sails mistress deferred to the Windfinder, even though the sails mistress outranks the Windfinders. The Sea Folk made the girls promise not to tell anyone, not realizing they weren't fully bound by the Aes Sedai oaths. I wonder how many Aes Sedai actually know the truth about the Windfinders. Also, deals with the Sea Folk are not to be broken, something to keep in mind for later. Elaine mentioned that they were passing Windbiter's Finger, which is this finger-shaped grouping of islands to the southwest of the continent. This means they traveled from Tarvalon, likely down to Tyr, and to here in just 2 weeks. Their final destination is Tanchico, which is here, just below Falm. Mat discovered Min was also on the ship and learned of her vision. Mat will be hanged by the neck, with a snake-marked doorframe behind him. Min admitted she's following him in hopes of preventing that fate. I personally love the banter between Mat and Min, and I especially loved hearing Min say a common curse word phrase from the books, blood and ashes. When they arrived at Tanchico, there were hints of fireworks. Tanchico is the home of the Illuminators Guild, a group of secretive firework makers. Tanchico is also clearly very dangerous. Did you notice that the young man who was hanged by the neck was missing an eye? I'm sure we'll learn even more about Tanchico as the season progresses. Back in the Two Rivers, Fael encouraged Perrin to rescue Mat's mother and sisters from the White Cloaks. Dane Bornhold, the often drunk young soldier, refused to let Eamon Valda question the prisoners. That is, until one of Mat's sisters channeled at him. Natty Cawthon claimed responsibility, and Valda immediately burned her as a witch. I was devastated to see Natty killed. Meanwhile, Perrin tried to stop Fael from helping, but she quickly showed him she could handle herself, pulling a second knife after he knocked the first away. I'm enjoying how the show is developing their dynamic, and how Fael is earning the respect of Bane and Chiad, the Aiel Maidens of the Spear. Also, book readers may have caught the name Child Bayar, a notable White Cloak rival of Perrin's from the books. Alana Sedai used the One Power to create cloud cover and help Perrin's group, and it's a good thing she did because they really weren't very stealthy. Alana's warder, Maxim, wanted to pursue Leandrin after she killed Ivan, but Alana believed the Two Rivers was more important. She recognized its significance. This land is filled with farmers who share the old blood of Manetheren. It's the birthplace of the Dragon Reborn, Mat, the Hornblower, and powerful channelers like Nynaeve and Egwene. What other diamonds in the rough might be waiting here? One of Mat's sisters can channel. Could there be others? Interestingly, in a previous episode this season, Eamon Valda had a similar theory about the Two Rivers, only where Alana sees potential warriors for the last battle, Valda commented that this land must be so tainted to raise such poisonous fruit. It's all a matter of perspective. During the rescue attempt, Maxim certainly proved why Aes Sedai need warders, taking down multiple White Cloaks on his own. It didn't stop Alana from doing her best Boromir pincushion impression, though. Remember, Aes Sedai cannot heal themselves, so what will happen to Alana, Maxim, and Perrin, who were all injured this episode? In the White Tower, Elaida Sedai continued to plot against Swan. The show once again hinted at the importance of Swan's special box, this time through the sound of her locking it with a one-power ward. Besides possible letters from Moraine, what other secrets might Swan be hiding there? I couldn't believe Elaida called Swan river trash to her face. The Swan Sanche of the books would have never allowed this kind of behavior, but I really do like the tension between the two of them in the show so far. We learned that Elaida was a teacher to Swan and Moraine when they were novices, and she remembers how much they cared for for each other. Way back in Season 1, Moiraine actually mentioned how horrible Elaida was to her during her novice training. Elaida is one of those characters we love to hate. We learned from Varen and Lyanna that if the captured Black Aja sisters are to be believed, there's likely at least one more Black Aja sister hidden in the tower. This episode gave us plenty of suspects to consider. Elaida was an obvious candidate, but when they lured her to the 13th depository, she seemed genuinely appalled by the idea of the Black Aja, and she even questioned Joya and Amiko about tracking down others. Then she unexpectedly killed Amiko. Some viewers were understandably confused. How could Elaida do that if she's bound by the 3 oaths? Remember, the 3rd oath allows Aes Sedai to use the One Power as a weapon against Dark Friends, Shadowspawn, or in the defense of themselves, their warders, or other Aes Sedai. So technically, if Elaida believed Amiko was a Dark Friend, she didn't break any oaths. The oaths are also open to interpretation. For example, an Aes Sedai can say something false if she believes it's true. Elaida might not have broken any oaths, but I wouldn't say that what she did was right. And apparently the Grey Man from episode 1, Jaichim, was sent by Moghedien to silence the captured Black Aja sisters. He struck quickly once the 13th depository was opened, killing Joya before she could name any others. Swan and Lyanna realized Elaida might not be fun to live with, but she didn't seem to be Black Aja, and so Swan healed her. Something I highly doubt Elaida would have done if their roles were reversed. Other suspects could include nearly any of the sisters, especially Lyanna and Varen, who have been seen whispering together away from Swan. This episode also showed Elaida conspiring with a White Aja sister named Alviarin. We've seen Alviarin before. She was present during the Black Aja attack in episode 1 and during Egwene's accepted test. We learned that the White Aja typically avoid choosing sides unless their decisions are rooted in logic and truth. Alviarin said she originally supported Swan as Amarlin because of logic, but now she's open to hearing Elaida out, who claims Swan is bad for the tower. Another suspect could be Adeleas, Varen's sister. She was attacked by Naomi in episode 1 and seemed to suffer memory loss, but in this episode, she seemed to suddenly perk up as the others were talking about Elaida. It made me wonder, could she be more aware than she lets on? This isn't in the books, and Adeleas wasn't Varen's sister there either, so this plotline is wide open. Maybe the last Black sister in the tower is even a disguised Forsaken we haven't met yet. Speaking of the Forsaken, let's check in on the Forsaken tracker. Nothing new has changed with the Forsaken since episode 3, except that we now know Lanfear was once called Mierin Sedai. She was the Aes Sedai who drilled into the Dark One's prison during the Age of Legends. Moving on. The majority of this episode dealt with the world of dreams, also known as Tel'aran'rhiod. The Wise Ones, thinking Egwene was a full Aes Sedai, took her on as an apprentice, and they began teaching her of the dream world. The TV show is trying to not only condense a ton of lore and information into a few episodes with limited budget and runtimes, but they also don't want to get too heavily into exposition, something Robert Jordan loved to do in his books. They certainly overpowered Egwene's dreamwalking abilities in this episode very quickly, something that took her 2 to 3 books to really even begin to master. But they also changed some things and cut corners in some ways to keep the pace and to hopefully keep the audience interested. Here are a few important things to remember about dreamwalking and Tel'aran'rhiod. Tel'aran'rhiod is a sort of reflection of the real world, and some things that happen there are reflected back in the real world, especially related to a person's body. For example, when Egwene entered Tel'aran'rhiod in this episode, and then was confronted by Lanfear, the injuries she sustained there were reflected after she awoke. Did you notice she had no bruises when she started her training, but then she had fresh bruises on her neck after Lanfear did her best Darth Vader Force Choke impersonation in the dream world? Dreamwalkers can enter Tel'aran'rhiod at will while they sleep. The Wise Ones are so skilled, they don't even need to lie down to shift between worlds. By the end of the episode, Egwene had already learned this too, using it to act as Moraine's spirit guide, which we'll get to. Melaine explained that dreamwalking isn't tied to the One Power. Both she and Bear are dreamwalkers, but only Bear can channel. Also, not all Wise Ones are dreamwalkers. Actions in the dream world rely on thought and belief rather than the One Power, much like lucid dreaming. Egwene was scared, and so she thought of armor, and her Amarlin seat armor from her accepted test appeared on her body as a sort of subconscious defense mechanism. In the books, many different characters enter the dream world by various means, but since they aren't very well trained there, their clothing flickers and changes a lot. It actually brings up some funny moments where people have stray thoughts about sex or fighting, and their clothing becomes armor or lingerie, or sometimes both at once. Similarly, the Wise Ones taught that if you want to be somewhere else, all you have to do is believe you are somewhere else. I like how the show has given us a visual differentiation between traveling with the One Power in the real world, with portals or gateways, as we've now seen a couple times in the show, and traveling in the dream world, with this sort of disintegration effect. The Wise Ones explained that while most people unconsciously brush against the world of dreams in their sleep, only dreamwalkers can fully enter it. As Egwene walked the dream streets of Tar Valon, we saw ghostly figures, ordinary dreamers briefly crossing into Tel'aran'rhiod Tel'aran'rhiod. This glimpse highlights how even partial contact with the dream world can be dangerous and why some people die in their sleep. This reminded me of this funny Far Side comic which shows this guy flattened like a pancake in his bed. The caption reads, "Dreaming he's falling, Jerry forgets the well-known 'always wake up before you land' rule." This is essentially accurate to the rules of dreamwalking in the Wheel of Time. Death in Tel'aran'rhiod results in actual death, just as injuries sustained there remain in the real world. There are actually two types of dreamwalking shown in this episode. First, there's Tel'aran'rhiod, a reflection of the real world, where Egwene trained with the Wise Ones in their temple and explored Dream Tar Valon. Second, dreamwalkers can enter the dreams of others, as Lanfear has been doing with Egwene and Rand, and as Ishamael did in previous seasons. These personal dreams are different from Tel'aran'rhiod. Injuries in dreams don't usually carry over, but Tel'aran'rhiod can cause real harm. That's why Baron Melaine made Egwene promise not to enter it without their permission, especially after they learned she was being stalked by Lanfear, though Egwene broke that rule almost immediately. The show introduced a new concept not found in the books, Egwene acting as a sort of dream spirit guide, helping Moiraine enter Swan's dream. To be clear, Moiraine never entered Tel'aran'rhiod, as she's not a dreamwalker. Instead, Egwene found Moiraine in her own dream and brought her to Swan's. It's unclear how this worked exactly. Was Swan dreaming normally, or was she there in the flesh because of her picture-frame ter'angreal? Either way, the result was a dreamlike meeting space reminiscent of their fish hut rendezvous from earlier in the series. While not totally book accurate, it worked for me because I wanted to see these two characters reconnect in a meaningful way. In a heartbreaking scene, we learn more about why Moiraine and Swan's relationship has been falling apart, mostly due to Swan's attempt to cage Rand last season. Moiraine reminded her of their roles. She was to find the Dragon Reborn, and Swan was meant to prepare the world to follow him. Swan admitted she lost sight of that amid the politics of the tower. Despite the pain between them, they promised they'd find each other in every life. Though not how this happens in the books, there is precedent for this. There are two heroes of the Horn who are basically inseparably connected throughout the ages. Their love is so strong that they always find each other in every lifetime, and always love each other in every turning of the wheel. It was a touching scene that felt to me a bit like a farewell, especially knowing Moiraine expects to die before the last battle. Do you think they were saying goodbye? Well, Egwene being Egwene, she took advantage of her new abilities and began checking in on the dreams of her friends. To be clear, she wasn't in Tel'aran'rhiod during these moments, just visiting others' dreams. Despite Egwene's lack of caution or respect for privacy, I really love these scenes. They offered a touching glimpse into each character's hopes. That said, Egwene was intruding without permission, which is honestly very book accurate but feels a bit sleazy to me. In Nynaeve's dream, we saw her with her accepted test daughter, Elnor, back in the Two Rivers. She dreamt of teaching Elnor about listening to the wind, in the same way that she taught Egwene back in Season 1. This was heartbreaking and beautiful. Elaine dreamt of being able to channel massive flows of the One Power freely, like the Seafolk Windfinders, without the stresses and weight of the Andorran crown. Aviendha even made an appearance, still in her Maiden of the Spear Cadansur. Elaine will certainly grow in her abilities with the One Power, but as daughter heir of Andor, will she ever truly be this free? And will she end up with Aviendha now that she's a Wise One's apprentice? My favorite dreams were Mat's and Perrin's. Mat was successful and heroic, wearing a tiny, book-accurate replica of the Horn of Valyr on his necklace. In the White Tower, he hugged his sisters and told them they'd never have to sleep on the floor again. The most emotional moment came when his mother told him she was proud of him. That's all Mat ever wanted, and now he'll never hear it from her in real life. I'm glad the show gave us that closure and let Juliet Howland, the actress, return one last time as Mat's mother, but this was a gut punch for me. Perrin dreamt of a simple life as a blacksmith in the Two Rivers, a hammer in one hand and an axe in the other, symbolizing peace and balance between his violent and non-violent natures. And then Hopper made an appearance, and I couldn't help but tear up. He almost seemed to fly as he hopped around gleefully chasing the embers from Perrin's blacksmithing. I was also pleasantly surprised to see that in Perrin's dream, he seems to have gotten over the loss of his wife and is starting to dream of a peaceful life with Fael. Meanwhile, Rand dreamt of peace, returning to the Two Rivers and reconnecting with his roots. He sits on the same rock from the first episode, where he and Egwene shared a heart-to-heart. He's even wearing his old sheepskin coat from Season 1, wanting to remember the shepherd he once was. But Lanfear knows this place and watches him, even here, appearing in her innkeeper disguise from Season 2. But her hair also looks like Egwene's hair. Clearly she's manipulating Rand, but how much of this is coming from Lanfear, and how much is coming from Rand? Rand certainly seems conscious and aware that this is more than a dream. Rand told her he still sees some light in Lanfear, remembering Murin Sedai from the Age of Legends as someone who once wanted to help. But Lanfear reminds him she's no longer that person. In contrast, she loves the darkness in Rand. How much of this is just Rand dreaming, and how much is his choice to be with Lanfear in his dreams? Sure, it wasn't appropriate for Egwene to spy on Rand's dreams, but to me these scenes really made Rand look like the bad guy. We've seen Rand and Egwene growing apart, and we know Lanfear's been manipulating Rand in his dreams for quite some time, but I'm guessing this is the last nail in the coffin for their relationship. Now that Egwene knows that Rand was literally dreaming of being with the same woman who's been torturing her in her dreams. And that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, liking, commenting, and supporting Unraveling the Pattern like these awesome Patreon and YouTube members. Please help me get to 50,000 subscribers by the time Season 3 ends. And until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of time.